Morning, everyone.
Good morning po,
Good morning,
sir.
sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning po.
Okay, sige, let's start. Ah, okay, so what we'll be discussing today is the Baumol chapter on marginal analysis. Then we'll proceed with our discussion questions, and if we still have time, you can ask questions for review for you to prepare if there are things that you would like to be clarified on. Okay, so let's start. Rules on marginal analysis. As presented, there are 11 rules. So ito medyo ano lang to, madali lang siya. You don't need to memorize it. You just have to be, anong tawag doon? Familiarize yourselves on this, okay? So the rule of marginal analysis, the first rule is that if you have only one, okay, suppose that you are a consumer who is only trying to maximize your consumption of as one specific good, or you are a producer who is trying to produce one specific good. Rule number one says that you consume or you produce up to the point wherein your marginal net yield, okay, is equal to zero. Okay, so marginal net yield is defined as, annotate tayo. Okay, marginal net yield is equal to marginal benefit minus marginal cost. Okay, ito yung idea of that. Okay, so whenever your marginal net yield is zero, then that is the point wherein you will stop consuming or you will stop producing. Because after that, okay, your marginal net yield starts to decrease, reaches magne-negative ka na. So what does this tell us? No, our marginal net yield is increasing. It might be increasing over time. So let's say, for example, if your consumption of an apple, okay, one apple that would give you, let's say, for example, in numbers 8 units of satisfaction. But over time, okay, your consumption of an additional apple, the marginal net yield you get is decreasing. So what does it look like graphically? Graphically, your marginal net yield would look like this. It would start to increase, but on a decreasing increments. And it starts to peak. After that, it decreases na. Yun yung tinatawag din natin yung example so to our revenues. You start to increase as you increase production, but over time, you will reach your maximum revenue, and after that, it decreases. So if you are trying to maximize your satisfaction, if you are a consumer, or if you are trying to maximize your profit, if you are a producer, then you would most likely produce up to the point or consume up to the point wherein your marginal net yield is zero. Okay, at this point. Okay. In mathematics, ito yung point wherein the differential of your, if you can still remember your calculus, nag-calculus kayo in senior high, no? The point at which the slope of your curve starts to be is equal to zero. Okay? So in for example, kapag your function is concave, then dapat equal to zero. Kung concave naman, trying to minimize cost, then again, it equal to zero din siya. Okay? Now, rule number 2 tells us if you have choices, okay? If you have choices, let's say for example, instead of just consuming apples, you now have oranges. Okay, now how many apples or how many oranges would you consume? Or if you are a producer, how many apples or oranges would you like to plant? Okay, so the rule number 2 says that all yield you produce or consume up to the point wherein the all yield the same marginal returns per unit of effort. Meaning, for this one, your marginal net yield of product 1 should equal to marginal net yield of product 2. Okay? Sa rule 1, you're not comparing between two products. So rule number 2, you're now comparing. Now, which one you produce more or consume more? Then you compare their marginal net yields. Okay? You will see it later as we discuss sa ating discussion questions. Nandun yung how much of time do we allocate for history and how much time do we allocate for studying economics based on our estimated grades. Okay? Rule 3 says, rule 3, this is basic. Your total, average, and marginal is just equal to 0, provided that your total is 0 at unit 0. Okay, why do we have to qualify this? This is because we have this concept of total cost, di ba? You have your total cost. Total cost is the sum of your total fixed cost plus your total variable cost. Okay? Total fixed cost is regardless of your output, you have a certain degree of cost that you are paying. Let's say, for example, if you are especially for a producer, no, if you are a plant, kasi planta ka ng production of steel, okay, your fixed cost would be your machines, your equipment. Okay, so that would be your even if you are not producing anything, meron kang fixed cost. So rule number 3 doesn't hold whenever you have an existing fixed cost. Kasi if that is the case, you have an average, your average at quantity 0 is positive. Okay? Okay, now let's proceed. Rule number 3, relation between total and marginal is just tells us that your total X is just the sum of your preceding marginals. I think this is very easy lang, no? If you can. Ano lang na. Clear ko lang muna. Drawings. Okay. As you can see here, no? At total 180. Okay, the relationship is that it is just at number of 2 units. Okay, at 2 units of production or consumption, you have a total revenue or a total cost of 180. Okay, and this is just equal to the sum of your preceding marginals. Okay, preceding marginals mo dito is 80 and 100, which is equal to your total at quantity 2. Okay, we know that we were able to derive our marginal because, okay, let's say for example, at sa unang kagat, sa unang apple na kinain mo, meron kang marginal benefit. Let's say for example, ano ba? Production na lang. Okay, total revenue of 80. So the marginal revenue that you got from the production of 80, production of 1 unit of good is 80. Okay. On the second production, you had a total of 180. Hence, the marginal or the additional revenue that the additional apple gave you is 100. So in total, 180. So you have 180 here, and the sum here is 180. Okay. And if you sum all of these things, yung at the 5th unit, okay, you sum all of this, and this should give you as well 250. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. So then so we're done with the relationship between total and marginal. Then we proceed with the relationship between average and marginal. So as you will see, okay, if you see on the rising average, it means that your marginal is greater than your average. If you have a constant average, then this is the point wherein your marginal is equal to your average. If you have a falling average, then that means your marginal is greater is less than your average. Okay? This is, mas makikita mo to sa cost at this point, no? At this point, sabi doon, when your average is rising, your marginal is greater than your average. When your average is decreasing, your marginal is less than your average. Okay? And at the point wherein your average is constant, or your average is at its minimum, then marginal is equal to average. Okay, at the point wherein your average is at its minimum, or it reaches a point wherein equal siya, then that is the point also where your marginal and average are equal. Okay. Next, what is the relationship now with average and total curves? Rule number 6 and rule number 7, dito lang yan. Okay, rule number 6 and rule number 7, out from your average and your marginal curve. Your total is just the rectangle. Okay, the rectangle. So for average, no, the total is just the area of the rectangle corresponding to a point in your average curve. Okay, so your total, your total is itong blue. Okay, yan na lang natin. At your total at quantity 1, Q1, okay, is this area. Now, sa marginal naman, it is the area below the marginal curve. Okay, let's have the red one. So the area below the marginal curve is your total curve. Is your total value. So this one. Let's have this one. Okay. And you can actually verify this, that the area of the rectangle is just equal to the area under the marginal. Okay. Okay. Sorry, that nauna pala ako. That should be rule 8 and 9. Okay, my apologies. Okay, so out from our total curves, rule 6 and 7. Okay, rule 6 tells us that you can derive your average out from your total, and this can be done when you draw a straight line crossing the point, crossing your total curve. Okay, let's say for example, at this point, okay, at point A. Okay, at point A. So from the origin, you draw a straight line. And the slope of this line, okay, is your average for that specific point. Okay, so let's say for example, let's have this, let this be point B. Okay, the average at point B is just, again, you draw a straight line from the origin and you get the slope. Then what is the slope of this? Is just 2. Okay. Yeah, the slope of this. And that would be your average. Okay. Now, ano naman ang sinasabi kapag marginal? The marginal tells us that the marginal is actually the slope of the curve. Okay, you get the slope of the curve. In this case, you get, let's say for example, you're trying to get the marginal of A to E. Okay, you draw a straight line again from the origin at point E. Okay, again here, then you get the slope from point A to E, and that would give you your marginal. Medyo hindi siya ganun ka-applicable kasi yeah, this is based on theory lang, no, na the slope of your curve is just your marginal. Well, you can verify it by using calculus. Okay. Next is yung rule 10 and 11, yung sinabi kaka-discuss lang ni ma'am, is the straight line margin, the relationship between a straight line marginal and average curves, and what if you have a general or marginal average curves. So sinasabi lang dito is if you have if you have an average curve that is linear, okay, your marginal is simply just the midpoint, or yung general pa na sinasabi dito is half of your AR or half of your average curve. Okay? So basically, you just draw a horizontal line. Okay, at least one. Draw ka lang ng isang line. Let's say, for example, at point here, you get another point here. Let this be, Wait lang stop share ko lang. Okay, annotate muna. Okay, so suppose at point B, here you point B. Okay, you draw a horizontal line. Okay, and what is the midpoint of here? So let's say, for example, that's QB. Okay, what's the midpoint between 0 to QB? Say, for example, that would be 1/2 QB. Okay, at least 1 point. And then from the point at which your average curve starts, you draw a straight line. And then you most likely you would be able to map out your marginal curve. Okay, in this case, ang kinuha lang niya is at point R. So midpoint between O and Q is W. So that's the second point. And then you draw a line. Okay. Now, madali lang. Pero what if you have a general curve? Okay. What if you have a general curve? Ito yung medyo nakakalito yung drawing ni ma'am, pero madali lang to. I think the same way as you do with if you have a linear average curve, what you just simply is that you pick for yung general na curve, you pick a point. Let's say, for example, R. Okay, you pick a point R. Okay, you pick a point R, and then you draw a horizontal curve. Okay, then half of that point, that is your first point. Okay, sorry, undo. Okay, so that's if you have an AR, average revenue, that would be your first point. Okay, however, that does not necessarily follow that is a point of your marginal curve corresponding to your curve. Okay, now what is the point that corresponds to your A star curve? Okay, what you do is that you draw a straight line intersecting that point from the point wherein your average revenue starts. Okay, so here in this case, nag-draw siya ng M. Okay, from here, point of origin ng average curve mo, and given this point, you draw a straight line. And Okay? And so kapag nakadraw ka na ng M, the first point that intersects, okay, point R. Okay? Yung quantity, no, the point wherein your ano to, tawag, your M straight line intersects the point, the quantity corresponding to point R, and that would be your first point of your marginal curve. Nagets yun? Nakuha ba yun? Clear ba yun? Na, again, horizontal line, and then you get 1 point, you draw a straight line, and the point wherein your straight line intersects the quantity corresponding to point R is the first point of your marginal curve. Nakuha? Okay. So in this case, suppose you are trying to get R prime. Okay, R prime. So again, you draw. Okay. Yan. You draw. Then what is the midpoint of that? Here. Ay, ibahin na lang natin yung kulay. Ayan. Here. Para clear. Yan. Ito din. Yung isa. Para hindi malito. Okay. Here. Okay. So what you do is that at point R, you draw a straight line. Okay, you draw a straight line. That would be A prime. Okay, now what is the midpoint of your R? Is here. Okay, at this blue dot. And since starting at C prime again, you draw another straight line to correspond to your M prime. Okay. Now again, this is not part of the marginal curve. What is part of your marginal curve is the point at which your straight line intersects the quantity corresponding to point R prime. Okay, it's here. Okay. Okay, now, what if, yung sinasabi ni ma'am, what if we are trying to get the M? Here na lang para may guide tayo. Here, let's say let this be R double prime. Okay, how do you get the marginal point for R double prime? Anong unang gagawin? You draw a straight line tangent to R double prime. Okay, so let this be, ay, ang hirap. Hindi ako, hanap tayo ng iba kulay. Pink. Okay. Assume nyo na lang na tangent to, ha. Okay. Assume na tangent yan. So let this be, ano bang curve dyan? A double prime. And let this be C double prime. Okay? So again, from point R double prime, you draw a horizontal line. Okay, draw a horizontal. Ibang kulay. Draw a horizontal line. Okay? Tama ba yung gawa ko? Okay. And what is the midpoint of this? Let's say suppose, midpoint nito. Suppose this point. Here. The midpoint here. Clear pa ba? Kita pa ba?
Yes po.
Kita pa ba? Okay. So, from that point, you draw another straight line that intersects to that point from C double prime to correspond to your to get your marginal point. Okay? So, suppose, okay. Yan. Hindi lang masyadong, wait lang. Gawin natin para clear. Okay. Yan. Let this be M double prime. Okay? Now the marginal point corresponding to R double prime is, di lang siya straight, pero let's assume that this is straight, so at this point. Okay, let this be, ano bang point ginamit nila? T double prime. Nakuha ba?
Yes.
Any questions? Okay, none. Okay, thank you. So, we're done. Let's proceed to any questions before we proceed to our discussion questions? Okay, none. Let's proceed. Okay, discussion question 1. Maria's marginal benefit per day from eating cheeseburgers is given in the table. Okay, suppose that a cheeseburger costs 45. Okay, what would be the optimal number of cheeseburgers that Maria should eat? Anyone? You have volunteers?
Sir.
Yes, go Raisa. Sikat ka ngayon, ikaw yung tinawag ni ma'am. Matchmaker na si ma'am ngayon eh. Okay, sige. Raisa.
Sir, hindi ko po sure if tama po yung pagkaka-execute ko po nung problem. Pero nung trinay ko po siya, lumabas pong sagot is 2 cheeseburgers po yung optimal number na bilhin niya.
Okay, bakit?
Okay lang po bang mag-share screen po?
Let's go. Sige, sige. Wait lang ha. Ayan, okay na.
Kita po ba, sir?
Yes.
So, nung trinay ko po siya, ang lumabas pong most positive value ng marginal net yield is on 2 cheeseburgers, 7.5. Then, pagbaba po ng 3 cheeseburgers, naging negative 2.5 na po siya. So, based po sa rule number 1, that we must keep the marginal net yield at positive value or whenever possible is 0 po. Yun pong lumabas na optimal value is 2 cheeseburgers po.
Okay, thank you. Are there any answers? Wala bang nag-3? Walang nag-3? Okay. Thank you, Raisa. That's correct. Okay. That's correct. Okay. Let's proceed. Medyo madali lang yung mga discussion questions natin ngayon. Okay. Next. Okay. So you only have 6 hours to study for your economics and history exams. Okay. Suppose the table here shows the relationship between your study time and the grade you'll be getting. First is that you need to compute your marginal grade improvements for both subjects and then identify how many hours would you allocate for econ and for history. Okay, anyone? Meron ba? I'll call na lang. Okay, let's have bio. Hannah.
Hello, sir.
Hindi ko po alam if ito talaga yung tamang explanation. Pero my answer po is to allot 3 hours for economics and 3 hours din po for history. Because sa mga iba pong combinations ng average, yung 91 and 92 po, yung pinakamataas, which is 91.5.
Sorry. Let's tama naman yung sagot. Tama naman na 3 hours. Pero let's have marginal benefit from economics and marginal benefit for history. Okay. So what's the marginal benefit for the first hour for econ? That is 80, right? Next is
6.
6. Then
11.
5.
3.
3. Then 2.
2. Negative
-1.
1.
Wait lang. Lipat ko lang yung okay, -1. Sa history naman, you have your 81. And then you have your 7. Right? 4.
3.
3.
1.
1.
Negative
and
2.
-2. Okay. Medyo weird lang tong ranking na to pero that is correct. 3 hours, 3 hours. Pero which subject would you first allocate your first hour? Okay, Camille.
Ano po, I would allocate my first hour to history po.
Right. So the ranking is that history, and then you'll have the second one is sige, Je. Okay. And then next, hindi ko kayo kita. Adrian.
It's history po.
Okay, history, and then Erica.
Econ po.
And then fifth. Let's have Zandra.
History pa rin, sir.
Sorry?
History, economics, sir. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, that's 5, and then we have 6. Okay, so medyo weird lang that you every hour you change yung yung ano yung pag-aaralan mo, pero this is just an example of how you rank your choices based on their marginal net yields or the marginal benefits that you get out of them. Okay, so that's correct. 3 hours for history and 3 hours for econ. But the first hour should be spent on history. Okay. Next. Table shows the total cost schedule for a producer of handwoven wallets. Compute for the average and marginal cost. Plot the average cost curve and marginal cost curve in one graph. And how many handwoven wallets should be produced to minimize average cost. Okay, sige. What we have to do is what is our AC, average cost, and our marginal cost. Okay. Anyone from the class? Yung hindi pa nakapag-raise ng hand. Sige, Zedrix. Complete AC.
The average cost would be none for 0 units.
0.
So for the first unit, it would be 125 because 125 over 1 is 125. For the second, it would be 100, 200 divided by 2. The third one would be 90 because 270 divided by 3. The third would be 90 as well because 360 divided by 4. And for the fifth one, it would be 96 because of 480 over 5.
Okay. Thank you. For MC, let's have sige, Angel.
Hello po.
Yes, we can hear you.
For marginal cost po, sa first po, 0.
Mhm.
Sa number 1 units po, 125. Sa 2 po, 75. Sa 3, 70 po. Sa 4, 90. And sa 5 po, 120.
Okay. So how many hand-woven wallets should be produced to minimize average cost? Any other? Si Maxine.
Hello po, sir.
Yes.
So, the hand-woven wallets would be four po. It will be produced at a total cost of 360, and then because the average cost and the marginal cost is equal in the fourth choice po, then it will be produced at 4 units po. That po, sir.
Okay, thank you. So the answer is 4. Again, as I've said, the point wherein your AC and MC intersects is the point wherein your AC is minimized. So at the fourth wallet produced, you are minimizing your average cost. Okay. Next. Answer the following questions. Okay, what is the average profit at point E?
Sir, may clarification lang po dun sa previous question.
Sorry?
May clarification lang po dun sa previous question.
Okay, sige go.
Dun po sa table niyo ng average costs, hindi po ba yung sa first row, hindi siya 0, it should be a dash. Since 0 over 0, hindi siya 0, it's undefined yata.
Yeah, pero tayo sa rule.
Yan
Here,
po, dash yung nakalagay.
dito dash.
Next slide po, nakita niyo po. Ayan, dash.
Okay. Sige. Okay,
Ayan po.
go. Pwede naman. Yeah. Let us have it as non-existing. Okay. So, pero nothing significant naman sa changes na. Kasi your average cost in reality, well, should start wherein wait lang ha. Here, in this, for example, in reality, your average cost is not 0 if you have a fixed cost. So in this case kasi we have our marginal cost is equal to our there are no fixed costs, so lahat variable. So kaya what ang given lang dito, total cost at 0 is also 0. But you're correct na you leave it blank. Okay. Any questions pa? Okay, none. Let's proceed. At point E, what is the average profit? Okay, Dayan.
And at point E po, the average profit would be 5 po, since yung total profit po is 20, and we would divide it sa sa output, which is 4. So the answer po is 5.
Okay. So what is the average profit at point F? Raisa? Ay, wait lang. Tatawag na kita. Hanap muna ako iba. Janelle Condado?
For point F, 6 po.
Point F. Okay, so that's 330. Actually, no. Okay, so that's 6. Sorry? May wait lang, let me think kung tama ba tong graph na to. Total profit. Average profit, sino yung nagsabi na average profit at point E is 5?
Sir, may question lang po ako.
Yes, sige go.
since
Sure.
yung sabi po in thousands and in hundreds. Ay, sorry, is my audio clear po?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. Janelle?
Since in thousands and in hundreds, yung nasolve ko po is 50 and 60 yung profit.
Yeah, that should be correct. That should be correct. Na yeah, the average point at average profit at point E is not 5 but 50. So ano lang, clear lang tayo dapat sa units para hindi malito. Okay. For what is the average point at point F? Instead of 6, that should be 60. Okay. Now what is the marginal profit at point F? Sorry, hindi ata nasulat yung point F dyan, pero yung topmost yung F. Sige, Jazel?
Hello po.
Yes.
Bali po, di ba po yung formula po is change in total profit over change in ano po, yung sa output. Bali po, 30,000 minus 20,000 over 500 minus 400 po is equals to 10,000 over 100. 100 po yung marginal profit.
Marginal profit at point F is 100.
Opo.
Any other answers? Thank you, Jason. Any other answers? Sige. Ja?
Yung marginal profit po, kukunin yung slope ng tangent line to point F. So, ang rise niya ay 30 at ang run ay 0. So, ang slope ay 0. So, ang marginal profit ay 0.
Yes. The marginal profit should be 0. Okay. Nakuha ba? The marginal profit at that point should be 0. Jazel, nakuha?
Opo, sir.
So, okay. Next.
Sir, excuse me po.
Yes.
Question lang po regarding lang din po doon.
Mhm.
What if po kapag yung hinahanap na marginal profit is at point G po?
Okay. Okay, wait lang Marginal profit at point G. You get the slope of at point G. Same lang on how you get the slope of the curve. Okay. Wait lang. Adrian, yes?
Sir, I have a question po. Pag po
Okay,
ba,
sige. Wait, sige, answer muna natin yung kay Erica. Erica, tama ba yun? Ikaw ba yung nagtanong first? Okay.
Apo.
Okay. You get what is the marginal of this point G? Okay, so how do we usually get the marginal? Anyone from the class? If you can still remember, how do you get the marginal out of your total? Okay, let's suppose point E. Okay, how do you get the marginal at point E?
Kukunin ko yung slope.
Draw tangent line.
Slope tangent to E. Tama, Blaine? So how do you draw that? How do you draw this? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, sige Maxine, how do you draw this?
Hello sir, try lang po. From the point E po, i-connect po siya sa point F and then it will form a triangle po. And
So
then by
you're
and then by that po, we can already get the slope.
you this is point F. So what you do is
Draw,
is do
yes po, sige po. Draw po dyan hanggang point F. Ay, hindi po,
That
hindi po.
one?
Sa baba po. Baba po. Straight po yung sa E.
okay. How do I
Straight
do
po.
This one pababa.
Yes po. Diretso po. Straight po.
What do you mean by
and then
straight?
stop. Ay,
What do you mean by straight?
I mean, diretso lang po. Diretso po hanggang sa
Okay.
Diretso po. Ayan po, hanggang dyan. And then yung linya po, from point F, pababa po. Yan po.
That is how you get the slope.
Yes po.
Okay. So how do you get point G? Okay, Adrian.
Sir, try lang rin.
Mm-hmm.
You draw po parang triangle din. Pababa po, G, then connecting to H. Ganyan po. Tama po ba, sir?
Tama naman. For point F lang, the contention is that from yeah. So usually, sino nga yung nagsabi na mayroong value to na point? Si Jazel. How did you compute for point F?
Nanood po kasi ako sa YouTube po ng mga tutorials po regarding dun po sa pagkuha po. Nakalagay po, change in total, total profit over change in total output.
Change in pi over change in q. Okay. So here, ginawa mo is 20 minus 30. Okay, divided by, well, this is in 1,000. So, yeah. Sorry. Yan, tapos 1. That's how you get 100.
Yes. Po sir, yung for yung dito po yung
100.
in hundreds din po. Opo.
Ayan. That's how you get. Okay. So, sino yung isa? How did you get 0? Sino yung sabi? I forgot.
Po, sir.
Yon, si Ja. Sige, how did you get 0?
Nag-drawing lang po ng tangent line na mag-intersect sa F. So, bali horizontal.
So, pa ganyan? Somewhere ganyan?
Opo.
Then?
Ay, hindi po, sir. Parang
Okay, undo.
parang halos horizontal po yung tangent line na ginawa.
Okay, well, yes. Sige. Sige, ayan. Okay, parang ganyan. Okay.
So,
Then you get the slope of this one.
opo.
Okay. So, mathematically, no, a peak, if F is at its peak, this should be equal to 0. Okay. Pero if you're doing it based only on the data that it has given you, we can consider 100. Okay, because the given is silent on point F. Okay, what you have is only B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay, so yun. What you can do for if you are to calculate point E, then you just follow this formula. Okay, that is correct. That is just simply change in your profit over the change in your quantity. That is correct. Pero ang marginal kasi is in between. So let's say for example, from 1 to 2, Okay? 1 to 2, mahirap to yan. Ano ba? Sige, let this be 4. Okay? Let this be 4 and let this be 9. Okay? From C to D, the marginal is around what's that? 50. Okay? Approximate zero. Let's say, for example, that is 50. Okay? The marginal is not on 2 and also not on D. Gets yung point? The marginal is in between. So let's say, for example, dapat kasi yung pagkaka-table, let's say, for example, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have your 1, let's say, for example, total profit. Supposedly, this should be, let's say, for example, 10,000. Okay, and then you have 40,000. Thousands pala yun. 4,000. 1,000. Okay. Then you have 9,000. And then you have 20,000. Okay. So your marginal benefit is in between 1 and 2. In this case, that should be 3. Or something like that. 30. Okay. This is hundreds pala. It's 30 and this is 50. And this is okay, nagets niyo yung point? So it's difficult to really compute for marginals if you are not given the correct na data, or if you have missing data. Graphically, this should be equal to 0. Okay, but just based on the givens, the 100 can be accepted. Any questions?
Sir, paano po pag for example, multiple choice exam, and you're given both choices na 100 and 0, which one would we pick?
Most likely naman we won't confuse you. The exam won't be confusing as this one. So
thank you, sir.
So you don't have to worry about it. Okay, questions? Yes, Adrian.
Sir, kasi 'di ba po, pag yung nakukuha yung 0 from mathematical, nakukuha din ba yung 0 if parang ginamit po natin siya in a mathematical perspective, katulad po nung sa formula po na change in profit over change in
Pwede mo yung kunin if you can have a very small point outside F. Kasi diba, calculus is for any change as close as to 0. Yun yung kinukuha ng calculus, diba? So when you get the derivative of something, so you can differentiate that value for any small change in your Q, and you would be able to get that is 0. So mathematically you can do it if you have if given yung very close point to F. But at this point, since E and F lang yung given, may F dyan. E and F yung given, then you can't have it equal to 0.
Okay po, sir. So parang sa graph lang po talaga. Okay po. Thank you, sir.
Anyone pa? Any questions? Okay. Clear. Last one. This one, given the average revenue curve, what is the total revenue when output is 300 units? Is 300 units. Any other hands? Sige, Zandra, hindi ko pa kita natawag.
For the total revenue po, sir, yung formula would be total revenue equals to average revenue times quantity po. So 80 times 300 equals 24,000 po yung total revenue.
That's correct, 3,000. So again, in plotting for this one, in plotting, okay. in plotting your marginal revenue curve, okay, choose out a point. Let's say, for example, at this one, 300, then what is the midpoint of that? 150. Okay, then you draw. Okay, then that should be your AR. Okay, and well, basically it should follow as well that you get, when you get this point, okay, 600, ay mali yung graph ko. Yan, dapat dito siya na point. Okay, so, that should follow, okay, that should be your AR. Sorry, MR. Okay. Any questions? Okay, anything that you would like for us to discuss on the elasticity, demand, supply before we end? Sige, Adrian.
Sir, can I ask lang po, what type of exam po yung sa Sunday?
Ano naman?
Multiple choice.
Multiple choice naman. So,
Okay po. Thank you, sir.
higher chances of winning. Any questions?
Ilang items po?
50.
Thank you po.
So you only have around at most 2 hours to finish the exam. Pero wag niyong sagarin yung 2 hours kasi baka actually dapat the exam is supposedly dapat 1 hour and 30 minutes lang. And the extra 30 minutes should give you enough time para just in case merong concerns about internet connection and other things. Yun yung allowance niyo. Okay, yes, Hannah.
So regarding po sa exam, do we have to prepare yung mga graph apps po, ganun, in case merong mga plot the graph sa exam?
No need.
Okay.
Well, you can have your own paper by your side and you can analyze kung ano yung shifts ng mga demand or how would this affect revenue or how does this affect your tax incidents and all. Yes, Zandra.
Sir, since yung sa email po ni Ma'am Nicole na yung exam po will not be proctored via Zoom po. So sa Uble lang po talaga pero synchronous siya. Yun lang po.
Yes. And I don't think you have enough time to talk with each other. So as much as possible, you focus on your own. There's no restriction. You have your notes with you, pero most likely you don't have enough time for you to scan everything and talk to your classmates. One attempt lang yung exam, so once you click submit, you cannot review your answers na. So make sure you're final with your answer once you choose.
May results po kaagad, sir.
We don't give the results agad kasi you don't give the results agad, but we will post it sa UVLE during discussion class siguro by Tuesday.
Calculator po ba kailangan?
Yeah, you can have your calculator. So you not non-proctored naman, so you can do whatever you want, but manage your time wisely. 50 items din yun. Any questions?
Sir,
Yes.
ka lang po na this is open notes.
I'm just saying that this is not proctored. So yes, basically is parang open notes na din.
Sir,
Yes.
Recorded po ba yung magiging mock exam po?